Okay, we're live, sort of. Welcome to the Mystical Mountain Podcast. My name is Chad, and this is a place dedicated to a constant deep dive into the realms of optimal health and healing, spirituality, the metaphysical world, supernatural activity, our true origins, esoteric knowledge and wisdom, and of course, conspiracy theories. On this debut episode, I've got the privilege of speaking to Mark Tassi of Tassi TV on YouTube, who delves into plant-based fitness, philosophy, and spirituality for the modern world. Welcome, Mark.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing pretty good. It's a nice, beautiful day, as you can see
What of
behind me
you?
here. It's a great view. How are you today?
I'm good.
Good, good. You're in the East Coast, right? In the United
I'm on
States?
the I'm on the East Coast in at the moment in the Northeast. We're approaching spring, which is good news. Um, your weather, I think, is probably milder than our weather, actually. Even though you're further north, I think it's fairly mild there on the west coast of Canada.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's the most mild part of Canada.
That's
Um,
strange. It's some sort of jet stream or airflow, air current.
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
we're right by the Pacific Ocean over here, close to it. Um, this time of year it starts, we'll get some days where it's beautiful out, nice and sunny, maybe
Right.
14, 15 degrees, and then other days it could drop down to 5 and just be wet and gross.
Yeah, well, that's how winter is here. It can get colder than that though.
Hmm.
Uh
You're on
but
the northeast or like the mid-east or?
northeast, yeah,
Oh, okay.
northeast. Near the
Oh,
coast, inland, but not too far from the coast. Near Philadelphia actually. Philadelphia, PA
okay. Yeah.
is where I am.
Home of Dr. J, Julius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I got some notes down here. I wanted to speak to you about a number of subjects
Okay.
today. I figure
All right.
we may as well start on the one that you're probably most known for, and that would be whatever you'd like to call it, but fruitarianism, a raw diet,
Right.
natural law. So, how many years now have you been into this way of eating?
Oh, I started getting seriously interested in it. Um, that would be 35 years ago when I decided that I was going to do it. Not that I did it immediately. It was a struggle for me. I was, people say, "Oh, well, this is an addict." That's not addiction. They say it's not addiction. Well, I don't know. I mean, you don't realize how addicted you are until you try to stop what you're doing and do something else. I found that one of the main problems I had in the beginning is that my idea of a raw diet was a fruit diet, was a fruitarian diet. And I just couldn't handle eating a sweet all the time. So it was, I guess it was, it's an obvious thing, but it wasn't so obvious to me at the time. It was about 3 years into it that I read the Essene Gospel of Peace, book one,
Hmm.
which is supposedly comes from Jesus. I don't know who it comes from. Whoever it came from had some insight into the natural diet, and it promotes the raw diet. And, it clicked on me. Hey, I can eat salads too. So that was kind of a real epiphany. It's an obvious thing, but like I said, in my mind, in the early days, those first 3 years, my idea of raw food diet was a fruitarian diet. And to some extent, it still is, but I think, there is a place for um, tender green leaves in the diet. There are some people who believe that, we're fruitarians, we're fruit eaters. Yeah, we are. We definitely are. And the higher up the scale you go in the primate class, the more fruit that those primates eat. Like the bonobo, for instance, our closest relative, is eating the most fruit. And since we are more evolved than the bonobo, we should probably be eating even a higher percentage of fruit than the bonobo. But at the same time, there's a reason why I, in particular, am drawn to savory things as well. And, when I've had enough sweet, I've had enough sweet and I don't want any more.
Mhm.
And that made it really difficult in the early days that I would not want any more sweet, yet that's all I was eating. And then so I would say, plus my weight too would drop dramatically in the beginning. So, people would think I was anorexic, and then I'd go back and eat cooked food and the weight would just come right back.
Yeah.
So I've developed certain theories as to why that is. And also, I've tried to help people who have the same problem in the beginning, who abandon the diet, think it's not possible, because I thought that too. I thought maybe I just can't do this. But no, it's not that. It's that the digestion is it's been degraded. It's been compromised from years of a cooked diet. Not only years of a cooked diet, but generations of an unnatural diet. Because when you look at Pottinger's cats, each generation of a cooked eater, when Pottinger fed the one group of cats cooked food, each generation was more degraded and had more problems than the previous generation. So that it's just generations of an unnatural diet. We're kind of born inferior, really. And then when we go to say, oh, I'm going to return to the natural diet, for most people, it doesn't work. I mean, it's not that I didn't feel good. I felt great, but my weight would just drop dramatically. Now it's the opposite problem. I really have to go back to eating once a day to lose any weight. Your absorption gets really good and your digestion gets really good. It's just amazing.
Yeah, what you're saying rings true. I think there's such a variety of reasons that people will get on a raw foods diet or a fruitarian diet or mostly raw foods and then get off of it, and they'll often think it's because of deficiencies in the food itself. And there's so many things that it would be ideal if these people could know and be told about before they jumped into it.
Yeah, it's somebody should write a book, and maybe I should. I probably should, because it's a thing that not a lot of people are talking about. And as far as the deficiency, I find that mad. I mean, I've done a lot with Chronometer, where I enter everything in just out of curiosity, and I've done videos about it, and I've proven. Now, of course, if the food isn't grown properly, but
Yep.
there is no way. I mean, a raw food diet, a fruit-based raw diet is the most nutritionally dense of any diet that you could possibly eat.
So I've got a quick question for you. People will often bring up they'll say it's not the optimal nutritional diet, and they cite things like lentils or certain types of greens being packed with more stuff. So I'm assuming that, from what I've learned, more is not always necessarily better. Plus, I think there's a lot of things in fruit that we don't even know about yet that hasn't even been discovered. But
there's no doubt. And, it's a simple way of I look at it as energy, as light, as prana. And that's virtually what it is. Really, we're looking for prana. And there's no higher source of prana, no higher vibration of prana than that which is contained within fruit. I mean, it's just, even the Kirlian photography proves that. You see the radiance coming from the raw fruits and vegetables that aren't there in the cooked vegetables. It's not there in the meat, because the meat is dead. You've killed the animal. And most people don't realize that they're eating rotting meat, because meat doesn't have much taste to a human. Our taste buds really aren't geared towards that, because we're not carnivores. It's so plainly obvious that we're not carnivores. So the rotting meat actually has more taste. And so people are eating rotted meat. So it's dead. It doesn't have the life force, because obviously you've killed the animal. Whereas, the fruits and leaves, they have the life force as you're eating them. And they've been in the sun, because basically we're getting our energy from the sun, no matter how you look at it, no matter when you breathe, you're breathing in solar energy. When you drink, you're drinking in solar energy. The food is solar energy. So it makes sense that those foods that are directly connected with the soil, because there's prana coming from the earth, and directly connected with the sun, because obviously the plants are getting their sustenance directly from the sun. They're closer to the sun in some ways than humans are, because we get that solar energy indirectly when we eat, right? But that's another thing. We have to get that energy directly from the sun just for vitamin D, never mind anything else. But like you said, as there are other things in fruit that we don't know about, obviously there are other things in sunlight other than vitamin D that we don't know about. I mean, obviously there's millions of things, right? There must be millions of things.
I think you're over the target with the sunlight thing, the food being built by the sunlight and stuff. Biophotons comes to mind. I've seen a lot of people, raw vegans, fruitarians, talk about that, use that term. There must be, I would assume, theorize that there's something to do with the light, the biophotons, the amount of biophotons in fruit that are apparently higher than any other types of food, that has some sort of effect not only on our physical health but our mental capacities as well, maybe even spiritual. I think there's some sort of connection with the sunlight, the biophotons, and the food, and that's another reason why it's probably superior to these other types of food.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's vitality is what it translates as. You're eating living foods which give you great vitality because they're so charged with sunlight, so charged with prana. They are living, not disrupted by heat, because heat is, it's interesting in the Essene Gospel of Peace, Jesus is reported to have said that the sun is the fire of life, and the fire that we cook with is the fire of death.
Uh-huh.
And that's exactly right. I mean,
Interesting.
at our distance from the sun, with the ionosphere, the sun, the fire from the sun is exactly right for us at our stage of evolution.
Yeah.
If we were closer, we might get fried. If the ionosphere came down, we might get fried, but that's only because of our primitive state. We should be able to live on this planet without an ionosphere, but we're not able to do so yet because we're still fairly gross and primitive.
I think that we're totally misled about how much, protein or whatever other nutrients and vitamins we need in order to be healthy. And that's why we're always thinking like, oh, the statistics on beans and legumes and stuff are so high, they must be the best food. I tell you, as an athlete, like when I work out in the gym, basketball, hiking, whatever it is, when I'm eating all fruit, or mostly all fruit even, it's like another level of constant energy and a completely different level of recovery and regeneration afterwards.
Oh yeah. Well, and also too, because it's so easily digested and assimilated, that, you're not expending so much energy in digestion. And that has a lot to do with it. So you're getting the most energy for the least amount of effort. The body doesn't have to expend nearly the amount of effort in digestion, because we're expending so much energy to digest the foods. And when you're eating things that are hard to digest because they're not natural to the human, you're losing a lot of energy that way. You're losing a lot of life force. You're losing a lot of vitality.
Yeah, I say it all the time to people. It's what you're willing to eliminate out of your diet, maybe even more so than what you're willing to put in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's what you eliminate. In fact, I feel best when I eat nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, at some point I'm going to run out of, well, no, it doesn't matter, really. I mean, it's got to the point now that when I fast, I don't feel like I'm fasting. It's like I don't even feel like I stopped eating. And
How long would you have to go for it before you feel like you're fasting, you think?
well, it's really when you get tired from fasting, it's not because of lack of food. It's because the body is doing work. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have a lot of work to do by means of healing and cleansing, you're going to have more energy not eating than you do eating. I mean, really, strictly speaking, energy does not come from food. Strictly speaking, I mean, um, uh, food is the building blocks, but strictly speaking, the body is less impeded when it doesn't have to digest it all. So, I guess the last time I fasted was a couple months ago. I was going to keep going, but I went 3 days, and into the third day, it was like I didn't even stop eating. I mean, there was no loss of energy whatsoever. And
That's amazing. I need to do more fasting.
yeah, I'd like to do one more before the weather starts to get warm, like a longer one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not a good faster. The longest fast I've ever done was 7 days. I know in the early days of fasting, I would get completely wiped out. Even last year, I did a fast. I couldn't even barely get off the bed. But that's not from lack of food. That's because the body is doing what it's got to do. It's probably cleansing.
Yeah.
It's doing some kind of resting or repair, and it's throwing all its resources into that. And that's why you don't have the energy. And that's the brilliance of fasting, because when you stop eating, which is the number one energy expenditure, is digestion. So when you stop that, the body just says, okay, now we can get to work.
Yeah. So I know you and I, we agree with a certain amount of things that like Durian Rider Harley would say. Uh, what would you say, like, because I know he's not a very big fan of water fasting at all, and I'm not so sure I agree with his reasoning on that. Obviously, he's on board with fruit and raw foods and stuff, but you know, what would you say to some people who are, you know, critical, saying that you're going to ruin your metabolism or whatever from water fasting and stuff?
No, that there is no such thing as metabolic damage. There's metabolic adaption. Sure, it'll slow down, when you
Yeah.
when you stop eating. And sometimes that's why you feel tired too, because if you don't have a lot of fat to lose, the body slows way down. That could be one reason. Like for instance, someone who is obese and they fast, it doesn't matter how toxic they are, they usually don't lose much energy because the body says, oh, we got plenty. So there's no reason to conserve. But if you don't have a lot of weight to lose, sometimes the body will slow way down just to conserve.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a factor too. No, I don't believe in metabolic damage. Harley kind of changes things around to suit his own beliefs, but yeah, there is a thing called metabolic adaption. But the thing about it is, there's something important to realize, is that we live to eat, but we also live to die. Meaning that, okay, we need to eat at this stage of our evolution. And I do certainly believe at some point we won't need to eat. Some people claim they're already there. I'm not sure. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I know I'm getting there. I mean, it's eating for me is more of a habit than anything, because I mean, I don't really need to eat that much. I did a year of eating once a day, one fruit meal a day, and I was riding the bike about 250 miles a week. And I had some excess weight when I started, because it's really easy for me to gain weight these days. So I lost about 10 pounds, which I wanted to. And after I lost that, the weight just stabilized. It just stayed where it was. And I was eating once a day. It was a pretty seriously calorie restricted diet. And some people would say, oh, well, you're going to blow back up because you slowed your metabolism down. Well, there is a benefit to eating less, certainly, because like I said, digestion takes more energy than any other biological process. So if you can minimize that, you're going to have more energy for other things, and you're probably going to live longer. That it's not really my goal to live longer. My goal is to feel great. And I find that the less I eat and the more simple my meals are, and the more easily digestible my meals are, the more energy I have, the more vitality I have.
100%. That's why you see people falling asleep after they eat cooked food, especially certain types of cooked food.
Oh yeah, starches, and people are eating like garbage disposals, right? They're mixing everything together. Starches, proteins, meats. It's just like the body was never intended to have to sort all that out. We would have been mono eaters in the tropical forest. We would have found a fruit tree and feasted on it. There wouldn't have been 10 fruit trees growing in the same area. We would have found a tree and ate our fill, and maybe not left the tree until the fruit was gone. Then we would have gone to another tree somewhere else.
It's what I love about fruit, because I can eat it and then I can just get up and go immediately.
Oh yeah.
There's no lag time and energy
No lag
levels.
at all. No lag at all.
And like I play basketball, and I remember I played basketball at Kitsilano Beach in Vancouver growing up in the summer, in the heat of the height of the heat in the day, like between 12 and 3, because that's when other people were playing, not because I wanted to. And I would feel bagged after 2 hours. The sun would just drain me. But now that I've changed my diet, and I'll go there with just some watermelon and maybe some water, and I'll bring a couple bananas, if I need some extra calories, and I feel great. I play 4 hours out there in the height of the heat and feel better than before after. And I think fruit also helps our bodies deal with the sun much better. I think, you're not as prone to getting sunstroke or dehydrated and stuff like that. And I think you're less likely to get burnt, actually.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like with that.
Yeah, it seems that way. And when you're eating this diet, the body temperature, I noticed, is probably a couple degrees below average. So you're more adaptable to heat.
Right.
And the 98.6 is not exactly natural. It's average, but I don't believe that's natural. I think that's most people. They're heated up from constantly eating a cooked diet. They're almost in a kind of state of low-grade fever, because there is that digestive leukocytosis, which has been proven. The body increases its white blood cell count by up to 400%, because it's regarding this cooked food as foreign material, because it really is. There's nowhere in our biological history that we would have eaten cooked food. What happened is that humans are extremely adaptable. So you leave the tropical forest, which is our natural habitat, obviously, because we can't withstand cold weather. Sure, we're very ingenious in our ways of adapting. We can kill a bear and make a coat out of it. Whatever we did back in the day, we used the fur of animals that they naturally had, because that was their natural habitat.
Yeah.
So we have this creative kind of problem-solving ability. We could leave our natural habitat and make it work, but that's not to say that it was optimal. So, we would have to eat things that were either, well, they just tasted better cooked, because they were kind of either not very appealing raw, or nearly inedible raw.
Or they are more digestible if they're cooked. Exactly.
Yeah, because it's not our natural food.
Yeah.
I mean, a bird is a grain eater. A bird is a natural grain eater. So a bird can eat grains raw. Humans really can't do. I mean, I'm sure you could chew it up into a powder, but my God, it wouldn't be very pleasant to eat a pound of raw rice. I mean, that would just be an ordeal.
No, of course.
So, we cook it. Actually, when you cook those unnatural foods, you're making them more like our natural foods, which is fruit, basically when you cook something, what happens? You soften it. And so it's, we're not meant to eat those things. And, I mean, when you see roadkill, a dead animal, a deer that's been hit by a car, you're not going to want to go dig into that. Even if it was killed like 5 minutes ago, it's not appealing to me. But, a carnivore would get in there and tear that apart and enjoy it. Or you're not going to run down an animal or, your friend's pet dog. Are you going to salivate and want to rip it apart with your teeth and eat it? But, there's coyotes in Los Angeles. They would eat our dog if they could get that. One coyote did come down and get the dog by the neck and was ready to drag it off. And my roommate had to run and scare the coyote off. And the dog was really upset. I mean, the dog was just terrified, but that's a carnivore. I mean, that's why when you run past a dog, they want to chase you. When a cat, anything moves, that's how they're geared up. I mean, when you see something run down the street, you don't want to chase it. We're not hunters. We are really not hunters. We have a color vision. We see the colors. That's how we identify the fruits. That's how we identify our food, with our color vision. I think I'm right in saying that carnivores are colorblind. They don't need to see color. What they detect is movement. And any dog, any cat will go after something that moves. That's just the best thing to do to defend yourself from a dog that's chasing you is just stop and stand there. They won't come near you unless they're a trained attack dog.
Yeah. So another thing, I know you're into natural law. I don't know a ton about it. I imagine I know some of it, but how do you differentiate between natural law and just like raw veganism, let's say?
As far as diet, you mean?
Yeah, diet, and then maybe you can tell us a bit more about it too.
Well, I mean, as far as diet, humans are primates, more specifically apes, anthropoid apes, and all the anthropoid apes are frugivores. And the higher up the scale you go, like I said in the primate class, the more fruit that the primate eats. And they've done studies too. They found that the largest brained primates ate the most fruit. So, and like I said, our closest relative is not the chimpanzee, it's the bonobo.
That's right.
And the bonobo is eating more fruit than any other primate. So basically that's it right there. I mean, you just can't deny your biological nature. Although some people like to do it, they'll stand there and argue with you that they don't believe that they're a primate. That's just because, I mean, they don't believe that they're a frugivore. That's because they're so disconnected. I haven't been so disconnected. When I was 9 years old, I was standing in the kitchen downstairs, and I grew up on junk food, probably like most kids in America do. And I knew there was something wrong with that lifestyle. I just knew. And I remember I was standing down in the kitchen downstairs in this house, and the refrigerator door was open, and I was looking down into the fruit bin in the bottom of the refrigerator. And I said to my mother was in the kitchen. I said to her, I'm going to stop eating all this junk. I'm going to just eat fruit. Mm-hmm. That's what I said to her.
Yeah.
And I was exactly right. And I didn't know that. It wasn't until I found the book Fit for Life when I was, that was the early 80s, maybe 1984, that I realized, hey, yeah, I mean, I was corrected when I was 9 years old, and I kind of got lost because I started to listen to the experts, the experts. You need a balanced diet, you can't just eat fruit. And, so they got to get protein, all this business. I mean, it's so complicated and clouded. And that's just the indoctrination from the educational institutions. The educational institutions are misleading us, maybe even intentionally.
I was wondering, I was going to say, I think they're probably mostly misled themselves, but maybe some of it's intentional.
Well, yeah, they are misled themselves, but you see, this is a hierarchy and it's compartmentalized. Because if you go back to 100 years ago, or even 150 years ago, with Pasteur pushing the germ theory, this was contravening natural law, was the germ theory, because it just doesn't work in nature. I mean, the germ theory is a bogus theory, but it was pushed because it makes money. Antoine Béchamp didn't have the support of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, et cetera. So, you know, his findings were kind of suppressed because it's not a good business model. And Pasteur was a good showman. He was a good marketeer. Antoine Béchamp was really just interested in the truth, and he debunked the theories of Pasteur back when they were both alive. But then you fast forward to 40 years later, then you had Rockefeller's medical monopoly, where he intentionally suppressed all the natural healing modalities, because once he realized that you could make these pharmaceutical drugs from petroleum, and that's where he made his fortune in oil. Once you could make these drugs from petroleum, then he decided, well, he was going to have his drug companies. He bought IG Farben, I think it's the name of the company, that made the Zyklon gas that killed that the Nazis used to exterminate Jews. And Rockefeller bought that company, and he used that company through which to sell his toxic chemical petroleum drugs. But what he did was he hijacked the whole medical system. He bought out the medical schools, and they had to teach his curriculum. And what they did was they developed a program where they took the focus away from the cause of disease, from treating the cause of disease, which is toxemia, really. I mean, the diseases are coming from toxic buildup in the body, which is toxemia. They took that focus away from that and focused on suppressing the symptoms with toxic chemical drugs. And that made Rockefeller a fortune. He was actually shocked at how much money it actually made.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's deplorable. So that's what we have. This system now is it's an allopathic system based on the suppression of symptoms with toxic drugs.
Going back a second to the tropics, the jungles, the rainforests. Two things about that. Are there any specific regions on planet Earth, tropical regions, where you have an inclination that people originated from? And if so, where would that be?
Africa.
Yeah. Do you think what about if the migrant? Because I was curious. I've been hearing an interesting theory about the Amazon jungle, for example. There's just such an incredible amount of diversity in fruit plants within the Amazon, just so close to each other. And some people have the theory that the Amazon is like an ancient, really ancient plantation of sorts, where people may have, or whoever may have brought in special kind of soil they have there for all these plants, and brought in the plants themselves and stuff like that. Have you heard about this theory?
No, but I mean, you know, the tropics, any tropical area is going to be good for fruit, good for. I mean, I go to Cambodia, and it's great for fruit, but that fruit is cultivated. I'm sure there's wild fruits in Cambodia too, but in Africa, the tropical forests in Africa are just, there's so many wild fruits there. It's just, it's amazing. And, you know, people say, oh, well, that's fake fruit that you're eating. You wouldn't be able to eat fruit if it wasn't man-made. You know, you hear that argument.
The hybrids.
Which is rubbish for two reasons. First off, number one, there's nothing wrong with hybrids. I mean, everything is a hybrid. As soon as you take two parents, the offspring is a hybrid, no matter what it is. And I mean, the meat eaters eating this cattle, those cattle are so the cattle is so hybridized. I mean, they're hybrids, but there's really nothing wrong with that because a hybrid is not a GMO. It's just it's a crossbreeding, which is
I've never understood the problem with hybrid fruits that some purists have, I guess.
Well, they're talking about like, well, you wouldn't be able to eat the fruit unless it was hybridized. So how could you be a fruit eater? Well, that is kind of not the whole story. It's the temperate climate fruits that were not very edible, but the temperate climate is not our natural habitat. What we've done is hybridize temperate climate fruits to make them more like our natural tropical fruits, because the hybridized temperate climate fruit, or I should say the wild African fruits or the wild tropical fruits, are as high in sugar or higher in sugar than any of the hybridized temperate climate fruits. So what we've done is make the temperate climate fruits more like the fruits that we would have eaten in nature when we were coming up through evolution.
Yeah.
So, and which were really high in sugar. I mean, those wild tropical fruits in Africa are really high in sugar.
Yeah. God bless them. It's funny. I don't hear people a lot, like within these communities, speak about Africa much. And the fruit in Africa, it's always Southeast Asia or like Central America or something like that, or South America.
Well, that's because that's where most people are visiting these days. And, those areas have been cultivated. There's a lot of great tropical fruits, and those wild African fruits, a lot of them you've never even heard of because they haven't been cultivated. And the reason they haven't been cultivated is probably there's not a good market for them. And if there's not a good market for them, a lot of times that's because maybe they don't ship well, they don't store well. Like, for instance, you'll never see loquats in the supermarket because as soon as you pick them, the next day they're nowhere near as good as the day before. Mm-hmm. It's like even after a few hours, they start to lose something. Like the best loquats are when you eat them right from the tree. So
yeah, that's why I want traveling to resume so I can maybe do some of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that fruit can change your eye color? I've seen some people claim that it has, and I've seen before and after pictures.
I mean, it's possible because the eyes are a reflection of what is going on in the body. So when the body becomes far less toxic, probably especially the digestive tract, that's probably going to reflect in the eyes.
Yeah.
I don't really know about my eye color. I really don't, study my eyes. My eyes have always been kind of a green. And so
yeah, I find
a hazel green sort of, So.
Oh, okay. I find iridology pretty interesting. I don't know everything
about it.
But
it can tell you a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I started learning about that through Robert Morse, Dr. Morse on YouTube. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible stuff if it's true,
Well, yeah, it's true because, I mean, everything in the body's connected. I remember I had a wisdom tooth pulled. I forget which one it was, but whatever side it was on, the opposite foot, the top of the foot on the other side was numb for like 6 months. Wow. After the wisdom tooth was pulled. Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole network of nerves and not only physical nerves, but subtle nerves and subtle energy channels. Because, I mean, we've got at least 7 bodies. Everybody has 7, at least. Everything in manifestation operates on at least 7 octaves. It's not just music that has octaves. I mean, because everything is music. I mean, everything not only emits light, it also emits sound. Whether or not you can hear that sound really doesn't matter because our physical senses are very limited in the spectrum of sound and light that we can perceive.
The number 7 pops up a lot. 7 seals, 7 chakras.
7 is a highly metaphysical number, and because really there are 7 realms too. Actually, there's 11 realms, but there shouldn't be the 4 lower ones. The 4 lower ones are because we've just become so evil, so backward in our ways that we've actually created these lower realms in order to accommodate the low vibration of some of us.
Now,
But
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that reminded me. I was watching another one of your videos where you're talking about the lower realms, different subject other than fruit, and you mentioned that I think you mentioned that you believe that what people call aliens might just be astral entities of a lower realm and not necessarily things from outer space.
Yeah, that's what I talked about in my video today, which I haven't posted yet, but it's an important point, and I go into that in some detail in the video I made this morning, which I'm editing now. But yeah, and somebody left a fairly insightful comment. He said, "Yeah, there are people that do know that. There are people in the alien movement or the UFO movement. They do realize." He said he saw documentaries on the History Channel, the Ancient Aliens, where there were people that discussed that these are actually lower astral entities. And, the danger is, it's, you see, whatever these dark forces do, they want to have control. And the way they get control is they weaponize fear against the people that they're trying to control. That we're controlled through fear. That's what they do. So naturally, they don't want anyone to know the truth about UFOs and aliens. So they fearmonger and they spread these lies about aliens. And they can even pose as aliens. I mean, it's the capabilities of some of the black magicians in the lower realms are pretty outstanding. I mean, they have magical capabilities and they can shapeshift. It's a lot easier to do those things on the other realms than it is on this physical realm. I mean, there are great masters. Jesus, for instance, who was able to feed the multitude with a handful of food. He was able to, he was a thought creator. He could, by thought, visualize, manifest things into being. And he did that, and he changed water into wine. And these are things which are the capabilities of someone of his planetary evolutionary status, because he came from the planet Venus. And this is the kind of beings that are on the planet Venus. I mean, to get to that level of evolution, you would already have been a thought creator for probably thousands, even millions of years. So
do you think he was like reincarnated here, and then as a child he grew up and then he realized who he was? Or
he would have been incarnated here, not reincarnated, but incarnated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Through the womb of a woman, which would have been an advanced metaphysical practice, which would have been carried out on the Star of Bethlehem, which was actually a spacecraft. And, before I talk about this in the video I made today, before the birth of Buddha, there were 5 stars in the skies, which were actually spacecraft. Before the birth of Moses, there was a star in the sky. And, the psychics of those days, they knew what was going on. They understood that they weren't stars. They knew that was a savior or an avatar was being born. And that's why you have, I think, was it Herod? His court psychics told him that a king was born. So he ordered all the babies under a year old be murdered and that type of thing. And
so just to clarify for maybe some people listening or watching this, and when you say, Jesus was from Venus, and these other things, now correct me if I'm wrong, these ideas, do they originate from the Aetherius Society that I know that you've been a part of?
Yeah. Just gonna shut that off for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Wow, it's really lagging. It's like really distracting. It's like I'm seeing into the past. Anyway,
well, it's okay. The audio is the most important part.
It comes from the Aetherius Society, but you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. For instance, in the book of Revelation, Jesus says that he came from the line of David and the bright morning star. Of course, the bright morning star is Venus. And another interesting thing is that the Buddhist symbols of enlightenment are the Bodhi tree and the bright morning star. And so, of course, it's Venus. And, you know, we believe that both Jesus and Buddha came from Venus. So, I mean, there are indications that that is the case. But yeah, this comes from the Aetherius Society mainly.
Yeah, and maybe you want to tell us briefly about Dr. George King, he was the head of it, right?
Yeah, he was the founder, and he was a master of yoga. He gained his mastery after 10 or 11 years of yoga practice, anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day. When I say yoga practice, I'm not talking so much about hatha yoga, but he did some hatha yoga, but mainly pranayama, deep breathing exercises, mantra, and you know, Raja yoga, Kundalini yoga, and he practiced that for hours a day, and he was able to got to the point where he was able to raise the Kundalini from the chakra in the base of the spine and lodge it in a high chakra. And he used that ability to bring through these what we call transmissions. And he was in contact not only with masters from the higher realms of this planet and masters from the spiritual hierarchy, but also masters from other planets, particularly from the other planets in this solar system.
Yeah, so bringing the Kundalini up and then stopping it at a certain point.
Yeah, and he had complete control over that.
That's fascinating stuff. I mean, a lot of, I'm sure, as you know, I mean, some people listen and say, yeah, right. But I mean, I'm pretty open-minded. I find it pretty fascinating. You never know.
Well, I mean, there is evidence that he was in definite contact. I mean, there's a lot of uncanny things. Like, for instance, they were on a mission at Lake Powell, and they were just out on a boat. And when Chernobyl blew, he told the crew that there had just been a world catastrophe, and they were out in the middle of nowhere, and he received that telepathically. So that's, and there was there were other things too where he had information where it was would have been pretty unusual had he gotten it through normal channels.
Yeah, I mean, aside from him, how do you feel about like the channeled stuff, channeled work? Because there's plenty of them out there.
I'm skeptical of a lot of it. Yeah, you have to really show me something for me to buy into it. I think there's a lot of people who are, I don't want to say they're frauds, but I think they might either be deluded themselves or deluded by the people who are speaking through them. And the other thing too, to keep in mind, if a person doesn't have that absolute control over the Kundalini, and they don't have that, which requires pure concentration, if they don't have that degree of concentration, the message that they're bringing through is going to get warped in some way. It's going to be discolored by their own mind.
Okay.
Whereas the abilities of George King, he was able to completely detach from really his own mind to the point where he wasn't consciously aware of the messages that were coming through him while he was taking them. He would basically detach from the message and just focus on a color beam he said he saw in his head. And it was just a pure, absolute concentration on that beam where he didn't think of another single thing. Had an extraneous thought come in, the message would have been warped in some way. So, you know, basically in maybe a good medium, you might get 50% medium and 50% contact. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a good medium. In an average medium, you might get 70% medium and 30% the contact. So it's a lot of the message is warped. I'm saying it's conditioned by the personality of the medium. But when you get the pure state of what is called samadhi, where that kundalini has risen into a high chakra, you get about 99% the message and maybe 1% medium. You know, there's always going to be some discoloration. Like, for instance, people say, oh, he's speaking in a British accent. How does this being from Venus speak in a British accent? Mm-hmm. Well, the being from Venus doesn't speak with any accent because they don't speak. They communicate through telepathy, but he was British, so that message was translated through his voice, which was British. But interestingly enough, the beings from this planet that he channeled, who actually do physically speak or did speak when they were alive on Earth, they speak with whatever accent from where they came from. For instance, there's a master called the Master Saint Guling, who is from the spiritual hierarchy, has an Asian accent. There's another master called Chang Fu, who is Asian, who was on the higher realms of this planet. And those messages come through with an Asian accent. So if you put a little thought into it, it's quite interesting. Another thing that happened was, voice analysis was done on these recordings. And the voice analysis was exact for all of the 14 beings that spoke through him. They all had a characteristic a vocal analysis, which carried on throughout this long period of decades that he was bringing these messages through. Well, and when you listen to the messages, you can hear the different sound of the voice. Even though it was George King's voice, there was a different sound from each being. And some masters from Jupiter actually spoke through George King, and they would sing the messages like a singing type voice. And what is interesting is that Jupiter controls art and music. Basically, the energies of art and music come from the planet Jupiter, and which would make one assume that those beings are very right-brained, and, I was at a Tony Wright lecture. I don't know if you heard about Tony Wright. He's written Left in the Dark.
I want to get him on. I messaged him, actually. I want to get him on because some of his work is incredibly fascinating to me.
Well, he brought up a point, and I never thought about this until I was at his lecture. He said, well, if you think you're right-brained, you're not. He said, because if you were right-brained, you'd be singing all the time. You wouldn't talk, you would sing. And that's what those transmissions reported to come from Jupiter. They sing. And that's the planet which we are told emanates the vibrations of music and art. I think probably the great composers and the great artists were inspired by these masters from the planet Jupiter.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff.
It's some fascinating stuff. And, the longer you're in this, the more staggering it becomes. There's a lot of things that you sort of, mm-hmm. You start putting all the dots together, and you're looking for inconsistencies, but there aren't any. And you're talking about hundreds of newsletters, dozens of publications, hundreds of recorded lectures, and there are no contradictions in any of it.
Have you heard of the Law of One, the raw material?
I've heard about it, yeah. I haven't looked into it too deeply, but apparently isn't Ra supposedly from the planet Venus or something like that?
That I'm not sure if. I actually want to read the books. I haven't read them yet, but I just remember looking at David Wilcock speaking so highly about them on his show Wisdom Teachings on Gaia TV. And a friend of mine was really into these books too. And apparently, according to David Wilcock, they're very good material, very accurate, because not all channeled stuff probably is.
I don't think a lot of it is. I think I'm not saying that there isn't value in it, but people are saying they're channeling this being from the Pleiades or this or that. They may not be. It may be just a being from the other realms. And either the channel is mistaken, or the being which is coming through is deluding, pretending to be something that it's not. But then
No.
like I said, there's that distortion factor as well, unless the person really has a lot of training, a lot of serious mental control. Those messages are bound to be distorted in some way.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna, I was gonna say, going back to the lower astral realms, the beings are, because I've thought for a while that I theorized that maybe aliens, what people think are aliens from outer space, are actually interdimensional beings. And I saw you mention
Right.
in another video you were talking about dimensions because people, especially new age, they're always talking about entering 5D or 6D or whatever, and how it doesn't really make much sense. So is there a possibility that, like, whether it's interdimensional or aliens from outer space or lower astral entities, when people are dealing with things like grays or demons and whatnot, that they could all be one and the same thing, but we just have different names for them?
Well, no, I think there are different species of aliens, but I do think that some of the lower astral entities are promiscuous and they like to fool people. If you notice, people who said they've been abducted, a lot of times there's missing time. They can't recall these experiences without hypnosis, and I think that's because they go through these experiences in an unconscious state, because most people, they don't understand sleep. Sleep is just another form of projection. So people are projecting at night, and they're projecting from the body unconsciously, and they may be projecting to a lower astral realm, and they're subject to any kind of uh, attack, lower astral attack, where like I said, these black magicians could pose as a gray, or pose as a draconian or a reptilian, just to terrify the subject so that people will have fear in aliens. I don't really. I do think that there are grays, but I don't think that they're malevolent at all. I think they're benevolent creatures, and because I believe that the belligerent aliens are kept out this solar system.
What do you make of some people saying that they've had nothing but good experiences with grays, and then other people say that they, have been horrible experiences?
Well, like I said, the good experiences are possibly actual experiences, and the negative experiences may just be lower astral experiences. Um,
Hmm.
it, it could be that they're pretty clever in the lower astral realms. Maybe they mix it up. Maybe they sometimes. I mean, they're really playing a psychological game. When you think of it, that's what they do. I mean, that's what they're doing right now with this pandemic, right? I mean, it's a fake pandemic. We know it. It's a fear mongering thing, so that people will take this vaccine, so that they'll lose their businesses. I mean, they did the same thing in 1929. They bankrupted the system so that they could buy all the businesses, and they could buy the banks at pennies on the dollar, or fractions of pennies on the dollar. So it's really no different. The billionaires are making billions. The billionaires have made record amounts of profit in the past year, while the middle class is going out of business and losing their jobs. So it's just another consolidation of wealth.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I got a question for you. So I've noticed in the 7 years or so I've changed my diet and spoken to people who've done the same thing and whatever and met them. I notice that people who are raw vegans or especially fruitarian, that they seem to automatically, once they make this change, have an inclination towards wanting to learn spiritual practices, wanting to learn the truth about many things, even like, conspiracy theories, whatever. It doesn't have to be related to fruit and love and light or anything like that. But they're more automatically inclined towards these things. And I also notice that these people seem to be better at disagreeing with others and might have a different opinion, whereas a lot of regular people, but as well as regular vegans, the typical kind of vegan, cook food vegan, whatever, bless them, are not quite like that. Do you think there's some sort of connection between the fruit, the biophotons, the raw foods, and people just achieving a certain level of equilibrium and wanting to kind of seek all these things?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. Plus, I mean, if you gotten to the point where you're getting into the fruit diet, you've obviously been questioning your reality. You've
Yeah, it could
been
go that way too.
questioning the status quo. So you have a mind which is seeking the truth anyway. So that is not just going to stop with diet. Some people it just stops with diet, though. I've noticed that. There is a raw fooder who is having severe reactions from the shot. And, come on, a raw vegan? You mean to tell me you haven't figured out that you shouldn't have that thing injected in your arm? So apparently he hasn't, and he's having some really severe reactions. And there's another raw fooder, I won't mention any names, but he's been a bit confused about things, thinking that you can't cure cancer and you need to go to, conventional means for cancer. They're not just connecting the dots, So not everybody is really seeking truth in all avenues, but a person who has gotten to the point where they're starting to realize that humans are frugivores, and that pretty much really goes against the status quo. Everybody thinks you're nuts. They think you're extreme
Yeah.
and that type of thing. And so if a person has gotten to that point, usually it's spilling over into other areas of their consciousness and of their thought. But plus two, you've got more vitality, you've got more clarity of thought. You're probably getting more inspiration because you're getting that prana from the sun. You're getting that energy from the Mother Earth more directly in a much higher frequency, a much higher vibration
Yeah, more.
than before, because you're not eating dead food anymore and you're not expending all this energy on digestion. That's the thing. A lot of it has to do with freeing energy up. Now you've got energy freed up for thought, because when you're tired, when you're wiped out, you really can't think clear.
Yeah.
So you figure people spending 50% of their lives digesting food, right? So we don't have to deal with that. We could use that energy to entertain lofty ideas or to play basketball or ride a bike, or sit and practice yoga. It's phenomenal. The more energy you have, the sharper your mental process is, the less impeded because digestion for most people is a real drain. It's a drain for everybody. That's why I say we eat to live and we eat to die. So the less we eat, actually, the better. It's like you said, more is not better. More nutrition is not better than less nutrition. Enough nutrition is what we need. And that varies for everybody. Depends on how clean the body is and how much you've restored your digestive capacity, because that all gets degraded and gummed up through years of an unnatural diet.
Yeah, I wish that I was raw food based right from the get-go. When I was a kid, I love raspberries, I love fruit, and then, I have uncles and aunts, or maybe occasionally my parents or at somebody else's house, try to feed me this other stuff, this meat and everything else, and I was always disgusted by it. I never really started eating much meat and stuff like that until I was like in my teens, actually. But then, I turned this way. I went more to raw foods and a healthier way when I was probably 27 or something. But I wish it happened much earlier.
Well, I started pretty young getting on the health path. Like I said, when I was 9, but I wasn't able to do that then. I wanted to do it. I remember coming home from the pizza shop with my friends, and I would just complain the whole way home. I would rant about it. Like I was 10 years old, ranting about what we just ate. I said, this is too heavy. We shouldn't be eating this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, how many 10-year-olds are talking about that kind of thing? Nobody. I can't think of anybody.
no.
But I was sort of, it was already in me. I was already questioning what I was doing. So then it was when I was 15 that I decided I'm going to clean up my diet, and I got rid of all the processed foods out of my diet when I was 15. And I'd forgotten about that whole fruit thing when I was 9, because I was, like I said, I was listening to the experts, but then, well, it was, like I said, it was when I was, I guess I was about 24 when I heard about Fit for Life. I'd already been on the macrobiotic approach for about 3 years, from the time I was 21 to 24. But then I heard about this Fit for Life, and Harvey Diamond was going to be on a talk show. And I had a college class at the time, so I asked my mother to watch the talk show. So she did, and I got back home from school, and I said, well, how was it? She said, oh, I thought it was really good. So I bought the book, and that's what got me into natural hygiene and fruit, because Harvey Diamond he's a natural hygienist, but he wrote that book for the average person who, not necessarily wants to do natural hygiene in its strictest sense, but he included, proper food combining and all that type of thing. So what I noticed was that the more fruit I ate, the better I felt. So then I started to say, hey, there's something about this fruit thing here. So, then I spent the next 3 years just trying to do a fruit diet. Like I said, that didn't work for me because it was just sweet all the time. So then when I got into eating salads, then it started to be more doable, and I started to have more success with the raw diet. I would, even today, I either eat once a day, or I eat one sweet meal and one savory meal. And that's sort of,
Your savory meal, is that like the salad you're talking about?
it's either salad or it's non-sweet fruit, like cucumbers, tomatoes, maybe zucchini.
Is that savory for you?
Well, it's not sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was gonna
So
say,
it is
like,
savory. Yeah, it's savory for me. Yeah. I mean, it's,
obviously your taste buds and everything change so much. Where like a typical person's not gonna think of cucumbers when they think of savory food. They'll think of macaroni and cheese or something.
yeah, sure. I'm sure. See, the reason we get addicted to these things is because they're so intense. The
Mm.
flavors are so overly exaggerated. They're so intense, and the food is it's so concentrated and condensed and heavy, and you just get you get so your taste buds become jaded, and everything is so salted. You take the salt out of the diet, nobody's going to want to eat that stuff. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it gets to the point where you can't even taste anything else. All you taste is the salt. I delivered food for a year, and the smell of the food was so intense because the flavors are so intense, and you could see why people get so addicted to it. The oil and the grease and the salt and the heaviness of it. It's really dense food.
Hmm.
And it's tough to work your way out of that. It's like a vicious cycle. It's tough to work your way out of it.
Yeah.
You're heavily immersed in addiction, and you just don't realize it because you've just been conditioned to think that this is just how it is. It's the status quo.
Very tough. And I'm convinced that it is an addiction, even though most people would again think that sounds crazy, but that's okay. I've told people, like, I realize that a good piece of, vegan cheesecake, or, well, normal cheesecake, I'm sure, but it's been a while since I ate that, or macaroni and cheese, this kind of stuff, it tastes great. I'm not denying that, but I find it interesting how when I'm done eating the cheesecake or the macaroni and cheese or whatever, vegan versions, that I'm like, wow, okay, that tasted phenomenal while I was eating it. But now I don't feel so optimal. I don't feel so good about what I
Yeah.
just did.
Yeah.
The energy levels are low. Whereas when I was in Ecuador, for example, on the Galapagos Islands, I came across this variety of papaya that it wasn't like the Mexican papayas or the Hawaiian ones. It just looked like a bowling ball. It's just like a big bowling ball papaya. And I picked it up and I smelled it and I was like, holy crap, this smells unreal. This is one of the best smelling things I've ever smelled. And so I got it and I ate it. When I ate it, I was like, oh my God, there's just sometimes when you eat certain fruits, especially properly tree ripened fruit, where I'm just like, this is like God food. This is like, not only like it tastes incredible, but while I'm eating it, it's like my body and my mind are in sync with when I should stop eating it. Unlike
Yeah.
the macaroni and cheese,
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna keep having some because it just tastes so good. And it's literally like you're just getting addicted on the spot. Whereas I can have the most incredible fruit on earth and I still am perfectly content to stop when my body's telling me you have enough inside of you right now.
Right.
I
Right.
find that very fascinating how they both taste incredible, but it's like the cook stuff, it's like kind of a different type of incredible taste. It tastes good, but it almost it, it's like I can feel that it's trying to suck me in and keep me there.
Yeah, there's different things. To me, like salt is probably the most addictive component of all that. I mean, even the raw gourmet stuff, it would be like so addictive. It would be like I just didn't want to stop eating. Like if I could spend $1,000 and just keep eating, I would. It was like you never want to stop. It's
It's
like
really
you feel
telling.
like you never get enough. And I think once I stopped eating salt, I realized that salt had a lot to do with it. Because I remember I was like this stuff is casting a spell on me. What is in this food that makes me want to non just keep eating it? Like no matter how much I eat, I want more. And I think, obviously the oils and stuff, but the concentrated nature of it. But I think the salt has a lot to do with that.
Oh, salt's a huge one, yeah. And then if it's people who aren't vegan, let's say they're eating actual mac and cheese, the opioids and the cheese and stuff are
Oh,
incredibly addictive.
yeah, the cheese was the really tough one for me to overcome when I was 21 when I stopped eating the cheese. When I got into macrobiotics, I gave up dairy overnight. Of course, milk was no problem. I never was really interested in it, but cheese, I don't know, something about that. And it's so concentrated, and it's salty too. It's salty and it's just
Well, I've heard that, milk keeps the baby calf coming back to the cow. There's a certain degree
that's right.
of
That's
opioids in
right.
it, and I heard cheese is 10 times more powerful than that.
Yeah, yeah, because it's more concentrated and everything. It's got salt in it. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's right. There's an element in the milk which, yeah, draws the calf back, no doubt.
And
So
then you take that's a big animal, and then take that amount of opioid or whatever it is. I've heard it called opioid, even though I know that's like a hard drug or something too. But
no, it is. I think it is morphine-like compounds.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
then put it into humans, and we're not even as big as those animals. We're probably affected by it even more.
Right. It's got a dramatic effect for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So the next thing I was going to ask you about uh, the topic of like ascended masters. So I read autobiography of a yogi, for example, and I was really fascinated by it. With the stories of his guru Swami Sri Yukteswar and Lahiri Mahasaya, and of course Babaji. And I found that one really interesting because it was speaking about how Babaji is an immortal that's can basically be here for as long as he wants or whatever. I don't know how that works. He can come in and out of this realm, manifest a body, always stays young. And I've always been kind of interested in like maintaining youth, and I've told myself for a long time, you know what? I'm done aging. I'm just done. Let's see what happens. I'm done aging. So, um I've heard you speak about this kind of stuff before. Uh do you think it's legitimate. It's when I'm reading the stories of Yogananda telling in the book how his guru came back in full physical form, like I am right now, in front of him after he had passed.
Yeah.
It just seems odd because the Yogananda seems like, a very good individual, a holy person, and it would just be kind of bizarre to me if he was just making that up in his book.
Yeah, well, he's not making it up. I mean, Lahiri Mahasaya was Babaji's, Lord Babaji's direct disciple. That life that was described in Autobiography of a Yogi, uh, yeah, there's Lahiri Mahasaya.
So we got
Yeah,
Lahiri right there,
yeah,
Swami Shri Yukteswar, Yogananda,
yeah,
Babaji, Jesus.
right. Um, so anyone who would be a direct disciple of Lord Babaji would have to be really advanced. So that was Lahiri Mahasaya's last life. And so, because what it is on Earth, we've sunk so low, we have to climb our way back to a proper standard of evolution. And, this is spoken about in all the religions. Jesus demonstrated it. It was a demonstration. The resurrection was a demonstration. And Jesus said, he who believeth in me, he will do even greater things than I. And he resurrected. So he's basically telling you what I'm doing, you will do. And these are masters who have gotten to that point. Basically, Lord Babaji came to this planet over 18 million years ago as an adult from the planet Saturn. He is a Saturnian master, and the most advanced masters in the solar system are on the planet Saturn. And, he came here when the human race came here after the human race had destroyed another planet in the solar system, which is now the asteroid belt. And we'd gotten to the point where I think it was something like we were able to, apparently we're only disintegrating 1/10,000th part of the atom in the hydrogen bomb, the hydrogen atom, 1/10,000th part. But when we were on the planet Maldek, we were able to disintegrate the entire hydrogen atom. So basically we had a thing that was 10,000 times more powerful than the hydrogen bomb. And we know that the hydrogen bomb that the Russians blew up in 1961 was 4,000 times as powerful as the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And apparently they could have made it double that. They could have made it 8,000 times more powerful, but they were afraid to do that. As it was dropped with a parachute to give the pilot time to get away. And the pilot wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get away.
The Tsar bomb, I think.
The Tsar Bomba. Yeah, Tsar bomb. And that thing was just horrific. It was a 50 megaton thing. And they could have made it 100 megaton. Now, back in our history over 18 million years ago, we had a bomb on that planet, which was 10,000 times more powerful than that. And they exploded one of those things and it just blew the planet up.
Good night, Irene.
Yeah, you can imagine. So that was a crime, and that's the asteroid belt orbiting around the sun between Mars and Jupiter. So we had to reincarnate somewhere. So we eventually started to come here, and there were two beings that came here at the same time. There was the Lord Babaji from the planet Saturn and the Sanat Kumara from the planet Venus.
Yeah,
basically to, I suppose, to guide us in some way, and plus also to look after the planet, because the human race has been a problem. And so Lord Babaji has been here for a long time, and he has had disciples throughout that time. And like I say, Lahiri Mahasaya was one of his disciples, and that was his last life, meaning that he would have ascended or resurrected after that life. And apparently so did Sri Yukteswar. When when Yogananda met Sri Yukteswar after his death, I take that to mean that Sri Yukteswar had also resurrected. Probably. And then, of course, we know that Swami Vivekananda, who was a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna from the 19th century, Indian yogi from the 19th century, who came from the planet Venus. Sri Ramakrishna was another avatar, but his one of his direct disciples was Swami Vivekananda, and Swami Vivekananda's his last life was his last life. He's now an ascended master who is a part of the spiritual hierarchy, which is a brotherhood of ascended masters. And there are many of those. There's the Master Saint Guling. There is who spoke through George King throughout the years. There is the Count Saint Germaine, who was French, who cropped up through French history for a period of 600 years. And there's all kinds of strange stories about these people. There's Dwaj Kul, there's the Master Kuthumi, who was a Pythagoras in a previous incarnation, apparently. So, you know, this is an evolutionary process, and it's because we don't get to that point in one life. It's pretty intense to get up there. It's pretty difficult to get up there. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Yogananda tried to bring forth the practice of Kriya Yoga to the West and around the world, and he got that from his lineage, I guess stemming back to Babaji, supposedly.
Yeah.
Have you practiced Kriya Yoga specifically?
No, but I practice something similar, which is, you know, the pranayama, the deep breathing exercises, which are a key part of Kriya Yoga. I'm practicing something similar, which was put together by George King. I practice a set of 6 breathing exercises put together by George King. He didn't invent any of those breathing exercises. They're ancient breathing exercises. What he did put together is the course. He decided which ones to put in. And I also practice mantras, which I have gotten from George King. And I also practice a practice called the 12 Blessings, which is a prayer practice. It's a means of using yourself as a channel for the spiritual energy and sending it out through the chakras in the palms of the hands and the heart chakra. And the 12 Blessings was delivered in 1958 on 12 consecutive Sundays by Jesus, who overshadowed George King on 12 consecutive Sundays. And he delivered this practice, this metaphysical practice called the 12 Blessings. And that's a really powerful practice for sending that power out. And, you know, I also do healing for people, and I send healing to people over a distance. And it's a really versatile thing. There's a lot you can do when you know how to use, you know, these chakras. It's really not so much knowing how to use them. It's just a matter of sending energy through them, and they start to activate on their own. And you do it for visualization. You know, where the mind goes, energy flows. So, you know, you're visualizing this energy, and you're attracting that energy through the mental impulses of this 12 blessings, which is it requires a very high frequency of thought process. And so those elevated thoughts will attract the elevated energy. And the spine is an antenna, and the chakras connected to the spine are radiators. And in particular, for this type of thing, the chakras in the palms of the hands. And when you get on with the practice, you can physically feel the energy. It's really not imagination.
Have you ever delved into Qigong?
No, I haven't. But it's basically the same principle. It's based on the same principle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can call it chi, you can call it prana, you can call it spiritual energy, you can call it love. Yeah. Actually, love travels on prana, like the prana is the carrier, something like that. And, you know, love it's an energy, and
okay,
it's you're you're transmitting this prayer energy or spiritual energy or love energy or chi or white light, however you want to look at it. It's basically, it's an energy which is similar to electricity, but it operates on a higher frequency, a higher octave of manifestation.
Okay.
But it's physical. That's the thing. And it does work. It heals.
So,
It just,
sorry, I was going to say, on Venus or Saturn or Jupiter or formerly Maldek, do you believe these places were like physical planes like we're in here now, or something slightly different?
well, they're physical planes now. They're just on another level of frequency. They're physical.
Like if we traveled there somehow, would it be like, my wood desk, like everything like is solid and stuff?
Well, if you go to another realm, say if you actually project to a higher realm or a lower realm, yeah, it's physical. It's just as physical as anything here. It's just it's vibrating at a different frequency range, at a different octave.
So do you think hypothetically, if we were to actually physically travel there, would we be able to enter it like, Jesus or whoever else, what other beings are in it? Like, would we be able to be in that same place? Or do you have to be of a certain, frequency yourself to?
Yeah, you have to be of a certain frequency yourself. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to get up there. If you can get yourself up there, sure, but it's pretty high. I really don't know how high it is, but it may be higher than any of the realms connected to this earth. I really don't know, because it's like attracting like. They are beings who, just like on this earth, we've created the lower realms because of the vibration of some people is so low, like a mass murderer or a Hitler or some of these people or the Romans who tortured the early Christians, the sex fiends of ancient Rome. I mean, the Caligulas, the serial killers, certain scientists. You're talking about a very low frequency of consciousness, which would go to a like realm. Well, on the reverse of that, the more highly evolved the person is, the higher their frequency, the higher their vibration, the higher realm they're going to go to, not only when they die, but even when you project. If you can get your frequency high enough to get to those realms, to where Jesus is, or to where Buddha is, or to where the Saturnian, well, apparently we're all going to go to Saturn, into the hall of self-judgment.
That's interesting. You mentioned Saturn in this manner, being associated with like Babaji and stuff, because like a lot of people that are into esoteric subjects or occult knowledge, symbolism, Saturn is often associated with like negative things.
I know. That's a mistake. Of course, in astrology, there's two sides of the coin, two poles. Just because we are of such a primitive state, these planets will affect each individual depending on where they are. I mean, you're going to have an astrological, I don't know what, you're going to have a significant astrological makeup where each planet has a certain role in your life, in your consciousness. So it really depends on you as to what kind of energy you're drawing from these. Are you getting it in a high, pure a vibration, or something which is warped by your own primitive state, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I know, I noticed that, and I mean, it could be because Saturn is controls karma. Saturn represents karma, and since there's so much negative karma, but no, really, Saturn is a very highly evolved planet, and the beings on Saturn are the highest, most evolved beings in the solar system. Lord Babaji came from Saturn. Sri Krishna came from the planet Saturn. They're the only two that I know of. They may be the only two which actually came here and stayed. I don't know. There might be others. but I know that those two came from Saturn, and really highly evolved beings.
Have you ever, like in your meditation practices or personal practices, ever tried to make contact with any sort of entities or these beings or anything along those lines?
Well, I mean, you have certain experiences. I don't know if it would be a contact, because I don't really think that they wouldn't spend their time contacting, like, me. For what reason? But I might get inspiration from, say, Jesus while I'm doing the 12 blessings, because it's his practice. I might get an inspiration from a certain being. Like, for instance, after George King passed, I knew quite definitely that he came to my apartment right at, I don't know, it was maybe a day or two after he passed. It was undeniable that he was there. I mean, I could feel his presence so so plainly, and because
Really?
we had group meetings there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he went to all of the official groups and branches before he left, because I mean, he was there. I mean, I knew him personally, so he
Oh,
might have just wanted to stop out and see what the place looked like, where we were, because he knew I was doing meetings there, and he knew me. I knew him personally. I'd met him, and I was doing lectures in the Philadelphia area, and he didn't want to hear about my lectures secondhand. So I had his direct fax number. We used to do faxes back then. I had his direct fax number where I would fax a report directly to him, and he'd fax me back, good job or something like that, or he'd
oh,
send
wow.
me letters sometimes. So yeah, it wouldn't be a far stretch for him to, decide that he wanted to just pop on in before he went to wherever he was going to go. And then there was another time I joined the staff of the Aetherius Society, which is pretty much you give up your life when you join the staff. And the reason I dropped off was, I had some serious issues. I almost died in 2008. I don't know if you heard my videos about that, but
Yeah, I heard some stuff about that. B12 related or something?
well, that was first. It started with hyponatremia. I ran my sodium level way down. It's a long story. I talk about it in some videos, but that triggered a B12 deficiency, and the
Okay,
B12
right.
deficiency caused a severe mental depression, which was just B12. It was just low B12. As soon as I figured that out, 2 B12 shots, and it was done.
Before you move on to the story, though, you might want to clarify because some people are going to say, "Oh, yeah, fruitarian B12 deficiency, that makes sense." So, what would you say to that? What with your
Well, no,
situation?
it seemed to be definitely related to the traumatic experience of low sodium, because I was fatally low in sodium. It was like the first time I gave up salt, and I guess 8 months into it, it was summertime, and I was eating huge amounts of watermelon. So I was like diluting my sodium level, and I
Oh,
was
okay.
sweating a lot because I'm doing all these big miles. I felt incredible.
Yeah.
So, to say that, oh, yeah, he was low in B12 because of the diet. No, I felt incredible. It wasn't until I went low in sodium. It was about 3 weeks after I got over that, after I was out of the hospital, then I noticed something was wrong with my mind. There was certain
Mm.
kind of mental anomaly. And I feel pretty sure that that traumatic experience of almost dying from hyponatremia kind of it depleted my B12 levels, because there was no problem before that. So I think that's what happened.
Okay.
But anyway, getting back to being on the staff is what we call it. After I joined the staff, I guess that was about a month on the staff, and I distinctly felt the presence of the Master Saint Guling, like absolutely. It was kind of a similar experience to when I experienced George King's presence in the apartment. He was right at the foot of the stairway where we would walk up into the room where we had our meetings back then. George King was right there. But the distinct impression I had was because Saint Guling actually visualized the Aetherius Society into being. It was his concept. So I really do think that he keeps a close eye on the Aetherius Society, and I think he wanted to just check out this new staff member, because after all, if you're a staff member, you're a fairly rare person. There aren't many in the world. So it wasn't like I was I was special in a way that I decided to completely devote my life to this, because you just give your life up. You basically have no life outside. You got a day job, and then you go in and work at the Aetherius Society every night and all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So basically,
no time for Tinder dates.
Yeah, actually, I lost some people that I kind of really liked, and they thought I wasn't interested, and it wasn't that. It really wasn't that. It was just that it was tough to figure it all out. Anyway, his presence was undeniable. I just knew it. It's funny because this is a higher mind. It's not like a conscious mind thing. It's a super conscious mind thing where you just know. And I could tell you other things where I just knew things.
So you weren't like
no, but I knew it was. I knew it was the Master Saint Guling, because this goes above mind. You're in the realm of super conscious mind. Like, for instance, I could tell you an experience where practicing a lot of deep breathing exercises, I would know things. Like, for instance, I lost a screw for a base for something, a tree base for a Christmas tree, and I lost it. And there was a guy, and I went out the next day, and there was a guy. Long story short, there was a guy about, I don't know, 200 or 300, maybe 2 football fields away. And I immediately knew that he had that in his pocket. Like, it's like when you're connecting to this higher mind, it's just like that. You just know things. So basically, I stood and waited for him to walk toward me. And I looked at him in the eye, and he reached into his pocket. He said, "Are you looking for this?" And it was basically that screw I was looking for. I knew he had it in his right pocket. So what I'm trying to say is there is a capacity of mind which is above the conscious mind, which it operates in a way that we can't consciously understand, but it does work that way. And you can tune yourself into that by rising up to it. It's basically when you see what the breathing exercises do, the pranayama, it starts to open the higher chakras. And when you open the higher chakras, higher vibration of mind flows in. And when that higher vibration of mind flows in, it's not confined to this time and space. They call this 3D. I'm not so sure that's the right terminology, but you hear people talk about 3D. Well, you're operating way above that. I understand what they're trying to get at, but what it is, it's a higher vibration of mind, which is flowing in through these higher centers, these higher chakras. And like I said, you're operating above time and space. And so you just know. So just like I knew that person that was 100 or 200 yards away had that screw in his right pocket, like that, I knew it. It wasn't like, I just knew it. It's the same thing that I knew George King was there, standing over there, just like I knew the Master Saint Guling was behind me. I just felt him. And another thing that I experienced was this depression when he didn't come back. It wasn't exactly depression. It was more of sadness. I felt like, he probably thinks I'm an idiot. He's never come, but it wasn't that. He just wanted to see who this new staff member was, because this is his organization. And apparently Saint Guling is about 2,000 years old in the same physical body. He's an ascended master. So these are incredible masters. And the fact that any of us can even get anywhere near these beings is just incredible. But the reason we're when you work through the Aetherius Society, so this is what I'm talking about. You're asking me, have I tried to contact these beings? No, not necessarily, but you can put yourself in a position where they contact you. You see what I'm saying? It's like your demand, you make a demand for these beings. You make yourself known to them. And I made myself known to George King. Of course, that was easier. He was working on the physical plane with us. But it got to the point where he wanted to meet me. And it got to the point where he didn't want to know about my lectures secondhand. It got to the point where he sent out a fax to the entire organization and told the entire organization about my first 2 lectures. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's not like if your demand is right, it's like seek and ye shall find. So I've had times where I was doing 12 blessings out under the planet Venus at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. There's the morning star. There's Venus, and I'm doing the 12 blessings, you know, and we believe that Jesus comes from Venus. These are incredible experiences. These are, you feel one with the spirit of Jesus. You know, it's indescribable. It's just because you've reached up. You know, you've risen up out of this mess. You've risen above this physical plane while still operating in it, you know, and we can all do that. And we're told how to do that. Yeah. And that's what yoga is. That's what these yogis teach. That's what Yogananda teaches. That's what Sri Yukteswar teaches. Lahiri Mahasaya, Lord Babaji. There is no difference between what they teach and what George King taught, what Jesus taught. It's one. It's one teaching. It's one truth delivered in different ways for different audiences, because a great teacher knows how to contact his particular audience. It's no good talking in terms that your audience can't understand. You know, and that's kind of the mistake I made in this past year. I've been so incensed, so frustrated by the foolishness of people that they can't see the plain truth that's smacking them in the face like a baseball bat, that this freaking pandemic is a scam in order to control us. And people just can't see it. And they're rolling up their sleeve to get this horrific satanic concoction injected in their arm, which is a genetic modification. It's a genetic manipulation. It's just unbelievable. So I got really critical of certain people. But what do you do when you do that? You don't reach them. They just put up the barriers, those defensive barriers, because they can't take it. In time, they'll learn that I was right, but I don't think their ego will allow them to admit it, because if they weren't guided by ego, they wouldn't be fooled in the first place. Yeah. You know,
sometimes I wonder
Jesus said a thing that is brilliant. If you take this, you only need this one verse from the Bible. Would you? He said, "I thank thee, Father, O Lord of heaven and earth, for thou hast kept these things from the wise and prudent, and revealed them unto babes." And that is all you need. If you know that and you live that, you don't need anything else, because he's talking about humility. He's saying that the wise and prudent, these are the people, their heads are so filled up with their own ego and arrogance that there's no room for truth. But the babe, the humble, I know nothing, teach me, guide me. That is the person where the truth will flood through, who will be able to see these things for what they are. It's the humble, the babe.
Painfully obvious to me.
It's painfully obvious
that there's you know, shenanigans going on behind this pandemic.
It's obvious to us, you know, because for some reason we've stepped away from that vile conditioning, you know, and we've done the work. We've overcome our own physical addictions more than the average person has. So there's something connected with addiction, which brings the whole consciousness down to a lower level.
Oh, I bet.
And when you come away from those addictions, this is why celibacy is recommended, because, you know, we have to rise above the physical body while still operating in the physical body. And that's what ascension is. And that's when these great masters rise above. They talk about breaking away from the wheel of death and rebirth. When you break away from that limitation, you go on to greater freedom. You go on to greater knowledge, greater wisdom.
So I noticed, like, regarding that, like I've heard some usually I guess Christians mention how one of the reasons they think, like, Hinduism or the stuff in the East or whatever, reincarnation is evil or it's demonic or whatever, is because they're convincing people to basically, like, not reincarnate or disintegrate themselves or something. And I guess they don't believe that if you stop that cycle that you would be going to a better place. I don't know if we would call it a heavenly realm or something like that.
Well, you see, this came about when the church got hijacked when the church became a satanic organization, which is what it is. I'm not talking about, I'm not saying that Catholics are satanic. I'm not at all, but at the higher levels it is.
Vatican.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is satanic. It's as satanic gets. So what happened was when Constantine the Great decided to adopt Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, that's when politics and power struggle got involved. And that's where, you had the emperors, which they weren't really interested in truth. They were interested in their own power. And, they invented this doctrine of eternal heaven and eternal hell. And they removed the doctrine of reincarnation from the teachings because they were just interested in controlling people through fear. It's the same story.
Is there any remnants of that teaching of reincarnation in the Bible?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, of course. I don't know how they missed it. Huh?
I have to read the whole thing still.
Well, you go to the Gospels. There's episodes in the Gospels where, for instance, I think it was the apostles asked Jesus who John the Baptist was. Who's John the Baptist? Jesus says John the Baptist was Elijah, who was a prophet in the Old Testament. John the Baptist is Elijah. So John the Baptist actually he was an extraterrestrial too. He was from another planet. But he had more than one incarnation on this earth. He incarnated as Elijah, and then he incarnated again as John the Baptist. But also there is the apostles asked, I think it was the apostles, but anyway, somebody asked Jesus, why was the blind man, why was he born blind? Was it because of his own sins or the sins of his father? So, I mean, how could he be born blind because of his own sins unless the people actually believed in reincarnation? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why would they even ask the question if there wasn't a belief in reincarnation? Of course, the belief in reincarnation is universal. It's just in, these Western religions that have been hijacked in order to control people, and for no other reason, because you figure if you can say to people, well, if you don't come to the church and donate to the church, if you don't come to us now and listen to what we tell you to do, you're going to be damned to eternal hell. But if you do come to us, you'll have eternal heaven. You'll be in eternal heaven. It's a lie, and it's a vicious lie. It's evil.
Control.
Absolutely. It's control. That's exactly what. Just like now. If you don't have this vaccine, you're going to get this deadly disease. So you better wear your mask and stay away from everybody. And it's absolute control. It's a control mechanism. And how do you control people? You control them through fear, because people are fearful. Oh, yes. The enlightened person has no fear. You cannot control the enlightened person, because fear is born of ignorance. So it's only the ignorant that fear. And you notice the people I saw somebody yesterday sitting in their car alone with a mask on at a McDonald's drive-thru. You know what I'm saying? I mean, basically, they're so concerned about their health that they're wearing this mask alone in their car, yet they're at McDonald's. So, I mean, the ignorance it's unfathomable, but that's what we're dealing with, because people are born into this indoctrination and they haven't been able to break away from it.
Yeah. So I agree. Going back quickly to the subject of, I'm trying to piece together a timeline in my head. Maldek, hypothetically, if that was a planet, where people were on before it exploded, where would, do you think the Garden of Eden storyline would come into play? Is that after Maldek, or was it on Maldek? And if it was on Earth, where do you think it might have been?
Well, apparently there was a race on this planet, a fairly highly evolved race called Adamic man. Adamic man was here before we got here. Oh. And
So these
So
Adam and Eve, Adamic man.
Adam and Eve, right? That basically Adam and Eve is a fairy tale, but it's a fairy tale with a lot of truth. You have to realize that the Bible is written in allegory. Much of it is allegory. These are fairy tales which have a great message. You know, they have a great truth. So, you know, when you read the Bible, you don't read it literally. You read it as an allegory, and you read it with your intuition. And the more developed your intuition, the more truth you're going to get from the Bible, because there's a tremendous amount of truth in the Bible, even though it's been cut to pieces by this satanic cult, which hijacked the Bible. You know, they tried to take reincarnation out, but the reincarnation, like I said, it's still in the Bible. I mean, you can't.
So you think the Garden of Eden would have been here on Earth, but it would have been those were the Adamites, or whatever you'd call them, Adamic people. Do you think it would have been in like a tropical region? Would it have been all fruit? And if we're reincarnated from Maldek, would we have been whatever we were then, eating fruit on Maldek, you think? Or totally, who knows?
Well, at some point, possibly, but you know, by the time we blew up the planet, we were more evolved technically or technologically than we are now. So, you know, who knows? We probably got caught up in the same type of addictions, you know, obviously, because if we allowed that planet to be blown up, we weren't really doing what we were supposed to be doing. I mean, sure, it was the black magicians, the power mad control fiends like we have on the earth today, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, you know, the cabal. These are evil people. I mean, wickedly evil. I mean, this is the thing. The average person doesn't believe it because they can't conceive of it. But we even have history of what John D. Rockefeller did when he created the medical monopoly. I mean, that is just a brutally evil thing to do. He didn't care who suffered. He knew that he was going to keep people sick. Didn't matter. And when they discovered that these petroleum drugs were causing cancer, what did John D. Rockefeller do? He established the American Cancer Society to suppress all that. So you're talking about a devil, a wickedly evil person. And these are the kind of people that run the world.
When,
and, you know,
when you get, like, when these people get something a hold of them, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, whoever, do you think they have something that has a hold of them? Like, is there some sort of entity, lower?
Yeah. I mean, the lower entities are using them, but they can only use them because what has really gotten the hold of them is power. That's what it is. Power is, I mean, but then once they get into the whole satanic rituals of the satanic world, the blood sacrifice, the adrenalized blood drinking and all that, now they've got a direct contact with these lower entities. And just like you can be inspired, you know, you could get inspired from, I don't know, like I said, you draw these higher beings to yourself. When you get involved in these rituals of such a low vibration, you know, one time I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I sent a blessing to Aleister Crowley, and George King said specifically not to do things like that, but I did it anyway. So what happened? One night I felt horrible, and I just felt terrible. And it was an awful feeling I had, like this black cloud was hanging over me. And I went to bed that night, and I sort of fell into a light trance state. And there I could see Aleister Crowley sort of leaning over me with a grin on his face. It was him. I drew him to me.
That's intense.
And that was a bad experience. And it was a really bad experience. And I learned my lesson. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. You know, George King said, don't do things like that because you'll draw those people to you. So, I mean, you know, this cabal, these Satanists are going out of their way to draw these lower entities to them. And, you know, these lower entities work through them, just like the higher entities can work through us if we raise ourselves up to it.
Yeah, Aleister Crowley, that's an interesting one. I've heard some people say that he's not as bad as others think, and others say he was the most horrible human on the planet. I don't
Well,
know.
he wasn't good, and I managed to make it through 700 pages of his autobiography. It was 1,000-page autobiography, but when you get around to chapter 50, he was kind of he was tied up with a black magic ring on the lower astral realms, which he wanted to get away from, but he said in his autobiography he couldn't,
Hmm.
because once he showed that he was that good of a pawn, they wouldn't let him go.
Hmm.
And he around chapter 50, he describes being tired of it and just wanted to get away from it. But you know, he'd already locked himself in. I mean, it's just like, say if you get involved with a vile drug gang, or say MS-13, and you say, I want out of this. Well, you may not get out of it. They may not let you out of it. You may have to change your identity or go into some kind of protection program or something. You know, it's not so easy to get away from this syndicate. Once you're in, oh, they want to control you. They're using you, and they're not going. It's not like the higher realms where you can walk away at any time. And that's the difficult thing. The higher up you go, the easier it is to walk away. The lower you go, the harder it is to get away. It's just like addiction, right?
Well, that's
It's like
the principle, right? I mean, the higher realm, God, whatever, they would want you to want to be there.
Exactly. And that's it. And it's not based on addiction and desire. It's based on aspiration, and it's much more subtle. It's much more tenuous. It's and it's much more precarious. It's easy to fall down, so you have to be vigilant.
Was there any things you can remember that George King ever told you personally that he maybe didn't divulge publicly?
Yeah, one thing stuck out when I met him. He was talking about putting energy. He devised these prayer batteries, or spiritual energy batteries, where you could actually put spiritual energy in them and store them. And he talked about putting energy into a battery, and he said, yeah, it's just like a sphere of energy. And he said, you got to just get it in just at the right moment. Like you have like a fraction of a second to get that sphere, which he could see psychically. And he said, it's like a sphere. He said, there's a lot of things you can do when you know how to use this. And he was basically, he was talking about the third eye, the Christ chakra. So he says, there's a lot of things you could do when you know how to use this. So I thought that was really interesting that he would bring that up.
And what would you do once it's in there?
It'd be in there until you wanted to release it back out again.
And how would you release it, and what would releasing it accomplish?
Well, he invented the battery. He said, well, the batteries were easy. That was an easy principle. But the difficult thing is once you get the energy in, now you got to know how to get it out. So there's another apparatus called a spiritual energy radiator, which is connected to an antenna, which he invented all this equipment. And basically you put the battery on the spiritual energy radiator, and that's how you get the energy out, and you can release it through the antenna. To be manipulated by the devas, or to be manipulated by higher beings. I mean, the Aetherius Society works in conjunct directly with higher beings from the spiritual hierarchy, the ascended masters, and the extraterrestrial masters from other planets, which there are still around the Earth. We're not really left alone. It's said that if any member of the spiritual hierarchy leaves Earth, that position has to be filled in some way. That karma has to be held in some way. Otherwise, it could cause utter calamity for the planet, because our karma is so bad. The very fact that those beings are here, allow our continued existence. If they were all to leave tonight, which they can leave at any time, They're not here for themselves. They're here for us. If they were to leave, probably the world would, that would be it. I mean, we would just have catastrophe after catastrophe because they're holding that karma in abeyance. The very fact that they make the sacrifice to stay here.
Yeah.
Because they could leave, like I said, they could leave at any time. And the fact that Lord Babaji is here, he's holding the most karma. And the Sanat Kumara left in I think it was 1957, who was here for 18 million years, over 18. He left, that being left and went back to Venus in 1957, but his place had to be, he had to be replaced. His place was taken by Lord Buddha. And now Lord Buddha Lord Buddha is the Sanat Kumara now on this planet. Lord Buddha is on this planet.
Is the Sanat Kumara, is that like a title?
Yeah, it's a title. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a elevated title. It's like Lord is a title, Avatar is a title, you know, Shri is a title, Sanat Kumara is a highly elevated being, you know, like Bodhisattva is a title, Buddha is a title, Christ is a title. Christ is a state of consciousness. The Buddha is a state of consciousness, because Buddha's real name was Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha because he embodied that Buddhic consciousness, which is a very high state, just like the Christ consciousness or the Krishna consciousness. It's interesting that Christ and Krishna, Christmas, Krishna, they're like one and the same. It's a state of consciousness that those beings attained.
Well, I'm gonna have somebody on the podcast here soon, who is all about the Christ consciousness, the idea that I was going to ask you about this, that in the Bible, you know, Old and New Testament, that, like you said, a lot of it's allegorical, metaphorical, whatever, that it's often in those stories speaking about processes within the human body, and it's coded, and the like 33 steps in Jacob's ladder is like, you know, the 33 spine and the vertebrae, and it has all these correlations to our physiology. Manly P. Hall has an interesting lecture you can find on YouTube called The Occult Anatomy of Man, which is also a book. And I was wondering if you ever went into this subject material. I find it extremely fascinating, with the whole Christ, you know, ascending, rising up from the dead, and or being crucified at a certain point along the spine or in the brain. I forget. I have to go over it again. But have you ever heard of any of these ideas?
Well, I mean, it's all mathematical. You can reduce it to numbers. None of it happens by chance. It's all exact. It's not by chance that we have 5 fingers and 5 toes, and that, you know, there are 7 major chakras and there are 7 realms, and it's all exact, you know. And so what numerology does is decode this math, you can call it that. And because, you know, colors have a vibration and sounds have a vibration and numbers have a vibration too, and they all represent something. And so when Jesus was crucified, it had to happen at an exact cosmic moment for it to work. And it had to happen in his 33rd year, just because of the significance of all of it. It's 33 people represents the Christ vibration.
Oh, I haven't heard that one before.
It's a master number, and it represents the Christ vibration, which is why Jesus was crucified at the age of 33. It couldn't have worked any other way.
Yeah, so some people have told me that they believe that not only are a lot of these stories metaphorical in the Bible, but that Jesus also actually did live these experiences and purposely lived them in a way to kind of match up with, I don't know, the idea of these metaphors. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, when you get to that level, there is absolutely nothing that is done by chance. None of it is happenstance. Every move that he made would have been guided by uh, a higher consciousness, extremely high. I mean, realms that we can't even conceive, because you got to understand, when these beings come to Earth, that's only a part of the consciousness. It's just a fraction. You know, it's said in the Nine Freedoms that that the masters on the planet Saturn can split their consciousness up into 1,860 parts and inhabit 1,860 bodies at one and the same time, and be fully conscious of each part. And, you know, each part would be a miraculous being, actually, and they could inhabit any type body, an animal, a human. And it's also said that the more evolved Saturnians can double that feat. So something like 3,600 different places at one and the same time. So when a being like Jesus comes to Earth, that's only a part of the being. The greater being is someplace else, which is controlling that aspect, which is incarnated through in an earth body under the name of Jesus, or whatever his name was when he was on Earth. And, you know, it's so, I mean, so that's just a part of the being from that planet. So what is the whole being in its entirety like? I mean, it's beyond our scope. And you got to figure, you know, this is what happened to me when before I came upon this. I was an atheist, the whole bit. I mean, basically, I became agnostic. I got rid of the Catholic faith because I said it's not logical. And so I became agnostic, and then I became atheist. But then at some point, I just had this flood of inspiration. When do you have to leave?
Sorry, myself. I thought you were saying that in the story. Yeah. No, I don't have to go at any time.
Okay.
I'm good for as long as you.
I'll just tell you the story. So, you know, yeah. I had this flood of inspiration one day, standing in the yard, and I was no longer atheist. And those kind of that inspiration is basically my belief today. It's basically what I received then. I just think I reawakened my memory from past lives. You know, I was a bit lost there for a while in this life, but then, you know, I worked hard enough to just sort of recover that memory, and I just knew what I know now. And that was years ago. That was July 29th, 1983. I mean, there's certain things that happen, you just don't forget the date because it's so profound. And so then I started to get exposed. So I was already exposed to Christianity through the Gospels, which, as far as I am concerned, that's the real Christianity. And even though the books have been edited, there's still enough in there that is pure. Then when I got into macrobiotics, I started to get exposed to Buddhism, because there were Japanese people that founded this whole macrobiotic thing. And then when I went back to school over in Philly, I was exposed to the Hare Krishnas when I was in Boston, but that didn't mean anything to me. But after I had all these experiences, it was a Hare Krishnas, they handed me this Bhagavad Gita, you know, over in Philly. After I went to college, I went back to college in Temple University over in Philly, I ran into the Hare Krishnas. It wasn't the first time, but like I said, when I was 18, I just went there for the free food. But, you know, at this point, I started to notice the similarity between Christianity and Buddhism. And I started to say, well, there really isn't a difference. I mean, the language is different, but they're basically teaching the same thing. And then when I got the Bhagavad Gita, I realized that Sri Krishna was teaching the same thing that Jesus and Buddha were teaching, but the language was different, but it was still basically the same thing. So then I started to question, who are these beings? And I could only figure that they were very evolved earth masters. That's what they were. They were evolved earth masters. But then when I came across the Aetherius Society, I heard an interview on the TV. The TV was on. It was in July of 1986. The TV was on in the living room in this house. And I walked in and this person was speaking and suddenly says, Jesus came from the planet Venus. And I was like, my God, that's it. That's it. That's who these people are. They're evolved extraterrestrials from other planets. That's why they're so extraordinary. They're above an Earth master. They're not, and it just clicked for me just like that. And I said, that's got to be it. So, and then so when I started to research the teachings of the Aetherius Society, the first book I got was the 12 Blessings, which was this book delivered by Jesus through the founder, George King, on 12 consecutive Sundays. And so I read that book 4 times in the first week. And then I got the 9 Freedoms, which talks about this whole process of evolution, where you go through the stages and you work yourself up to enlightenment, and you get into cosmic consciousness. And once you can control cosmic consciousness, which is raising the Kundalini in its entirety from the chakra at the base of the spine and lodging it into the crown. And then when you could do that at will, then you're ready to take the next step, which is breaking away from the wheel of death and rebirth, which is ascension, which is the 6th freedom. And so, which is what Jesus demonstrated, which Sri Yukteswar demonstrated, which other masters have demonstrated. So these are living demonstrations of these truths, and we have examples of that. How, Sri Yukteswar came back to Yogananda. Well, that's because that was his last life. He ascended. He is now an immortal. Lahiri Mahasaya, it's described in Autobiography of a Yogi that was his last life. So he is now ascended. And that's where we're all going. And the 9 Freedoms describes this. So you realize that, up until that point, we were taught that nirvana was the goal. Well, actually, nirvana is really just a starting point. That's really when you just start to gain true freedom. When you break away from the limitations of this life, of this physical body, you start to really break away from the attachments. And that's the whole thing. It's the attachments that keep us anchored to this planet. And it's not natural for any being to be anchored to any planet. We should be able to travel to any planet we like.
So do you think then, if you escape the cycle of reincarnation, you ascend to this other realm, would people have the choice of staying there? Or, because I hear the constant theme, like Swami Sri Yukteswar mentioned how in the book, supposedly how he had either chosen or been chosen to help other beings now in other places or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you start to realize that the whole purpose of life is service. I mean, you start to manifest love in its purest aspects, and when you manifest love, there's only one option, and that's to serve. It's like, for instance, for me, I mean, people talk about peace, glibly talk about peace, and for me, and I'm not very evolved, but even for somebody like me, the concept of peace is the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, how could I mean, stillness is one thing. Yeah, I seek stillness because all of this movement and all of this mind chatter, this is just keeping me from my purpose. Stillness is a goal I have, to be absolutely still. But to be peaceful in this world, in this day, to me, I'm not interested in peace. While people are out of work, they've lost their jobs, people are committing suicide, people are having this concoction injected in their arms, how could I even be concerned about peace? I'm interested in spreading the truth so that others might possibly see what I see. And it's not like I see that much, but I can see quite obviously that this is a very evil and dark agenda, which is we're being led down this path. We're being led to a path which leads nowhere but hell. I want to turn people's attention. I want to get people, try to steer people away from that, get them going in the upward direction rather than this direction to hell. It's very, they do this to people through fear. I read somebody put up a post on Facebook and it said, this woman said, the best Nazis were the nicest people. Because these people, they didn't want to make waves, they didn't want to, they were told to put on that mask, so they just put on that mask because they didn't want to upset anybody. Do you know what I'm saying?
Probably
so
same thing
until we stand up and say, no, it stops, and it stops with me. And if you want me to put on that mask, you're going to have to kill me first. Then you could put that mask on my dead body, but I'm not putting on that mask. If you want to inject me with, no, you want to inject me with that concoction, you have to kill me first, then you can inject my dead body. And until you say that, until we have a race that says, it wakes up in the morning and says, today is a good day to die, we're not gonna take our power back from these fiends. And that's what they are. They're fiends. They seek to control.
We're waiting on a great awakening here soon. A lot of people are waiting on a great awakening. It couldn't come soon enough.
You know what? You say to yourself, I'm bringing it here today. I'm bringing it. And if anybody wants to come with, I'm going to try to take as many people with me as I can. But if they don't want to come, that's their choice. And, you got to give them that choice. And
yeah. I saw you mention another video about inhabitants on the sun. I'm wondering where you got that information from and what you think that would be like there.
Well, I got that from the 9 freedoms, because the 9th freedom is solar existence. So this is the 9 freedoms is a dissertation on evolution. Like I said, before the 9 freedoms, the teaching was nirvana is the goal, which it is. I mean, basically nirvana is cosmic consciousness. Nirvana is samadhi, where you take there's 2 different types of samadhi. There's samadhi with seed and samadhi without seed. Seedless samadhi or samadhi with seed. So samadhi with seed is a very high state of consciousness, which, where the Kundalini is risen into a very high chakra, even as high as the Christ chakra. But there's still, in the 9 freedoms, it describes that some of the lower chakras are still warm, meaning that there's still some attachment there. And while there is the slightest modicum of attachment, you can't leave Earth. You're still bound to the Earth. But samadhi without seed is when the Kundalini is risen in its entirety into the crown, and where all the chakras below go completely cold. And that means you have completely detached from all physical manifestation, and now you are one with that. And you basically, when you could do that at will, you're ready to take the next step. And because you have learned all the lessons that this planet has offered to you, and you've detached from all of the materialist aspects of this life. You have completely controlled all aspects of this life, and you've detached from all aspects of this life. So you're basically you're in the state of cosmic consciousness, which is nirvana. But now we learn from the 9 freedoms that's just the beginning. Now you can well, we knew there was ascended masters. I mean, Jesus demonstrated it. So basically that's the 6th freedom is ascension. So what happens after that? Well, then you can either stay here and join the spiritual hierarchy and be of service to people of this earth, be of service to this earth, or you can go to another planet in this solar system. And that's the 7th freedom, which is interplanetary existence. And that's a certain set of planets. And then And that goes on for millions of years, probably, until you reach the eighth freedom, which is Saturnian existence. So after you've gone through all these sets of experiences on the different planets in this solar system, and there's two levels of interplanetary experience. There's the first level, and then there's a higher level. And after you've gone through all that experience, then you qualify for a Saturnian experience when you become one of the Saturnian masters. And there's two levels of that. There's probably more than two levels, but there's two basic levels. You know, there's only so much we can understand in this stuff, and it's described in the 9 freedoms. But then after that, then you go to an even higher level of existence, and that's solar existence. And basically, you're asking me what that's like. Well, we can only dream of what that must be like, but you virtually become one of the radiations. You become basically the radiations of the sun. You become like an essential part of the life force of the sun.
I wonder if that would get boring or not, or if we would have that.
I don't think. Well, you know, even to get there, at some point, just to enter into the Saturnian life cycle, you have to go into meditation for something like 125,000 Earth years. Could you imagine? Like 125,000 years, you're just in a state of complete stillness where you think of one thing for 125. Your mind doesn't. It's hard to keep your mind straight for 5 minutes in our state of being. Here's a being who could stay in one state of consciousness with their thought on one single thought, one single point of concentration for 125,000 years. So it's beyond our comprehension what these beings are capable of, and their highly elevated status.
And where does this information come from?
Well, it was channeled through George King from a being called Mars Sector 6. It's a pseudonym. He is connected to Mars in some way. We thought that he was a Martian until he was made a Lord of Karma at some point. He's a Lord of Karma. And it's a whole hierarchy. You know, there's not the Godhead in man. There's the Godhead, and there's a complete hierarchy coming down from the Godhead, which is when you put the 9 freedoms and the 12 blessings together, you could kind of see this hierarchy, because there are beings which are even above the solar lords. Because when you go above the solar lords, then you become a planet. You become a planet. And then after you become a planet, you become a sun. And then after you become a sun, you become a solar system. Become a solar system. And after you become a solar system, you become a galaxy. The galaxy is a being. So in the 10th blessing, we say, blessed is the mighty galaxy. We send our blessing to the galaxy, which is a being.
So we'd be all bacteria. Huh? We'd all be like bacteria on the galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. We're like these microbes. You know, a planet is a microbe compared to a galaxy. So, you know, we're these like super microbes, these specks, these points of consciousness, which is evolving back. And what are we evolving back to? We're evolving back to unity. We're evolving back to oneness, because God is the eternal simple. God is the eternal one. Just like Yogananda said, people ask, how old are you? He says, I'm one. Because really, that is really your true age is one, because you always were and you always will be.
Not zero.
So we have these relative, I'm 53 or I'm 36 or I'm 59 or I'm 87. No, I'm one, because I always was and I always will be. I mean, we are eternal. We are one with that which is, that's the first words ever spoken to Earth. You know,
yeah.
When that great Lord said, "I am who am" to Moses on Mount Sinai, I think he was saying, "I am," and "I am" can be translated into the Sanskrit word "aum," which is the word which is the word which was with God in the beginning. That's the creative word, the aum, which the sun emanates every 32 minutes. And if you can reach a high enough state of consciousness, you can hear the sun emanate that word every 32 minutes. And that's the pranas. There are 5 major pranas and 5 minor pranas, and each of them flow from the sun for 32 minutes making up for a period of 160 minutes. And scientists, they found that the sun goes through regular cycles of expansion and contraction, which last exactly 160 minutes.
Hmm.
So
And
science proves these things, even though science is infantile,
yeah,
right? It's a very backward. We look at our cell phones and our computers and technology. I think we're so advanced, but this is very primitive compared to where the evolved beings really are. I mean, these beings are so evolved that people don't even believe in them. When I talk about beings from Saturn, from Venus, that
of
Jesus
course.
came
Yeah.
from, I mean, people think you're crazy, but
Yeah.
the more you look into this, the more logical it becomes. The greatest logic I have ever come across is the logic in the 9 freedoms and the 12 blessings. And it's like George King said, if you read the 12 blessings, he said, you won't know much. He said, but if you practice it, if you practice the 12 blessings, because it is a practice, he said, the knowledge within it will be yours. And it will be because you're raising up your vibrations. You're sending that energy through you of a higher frequency. You're opening up those chakras because.
Is that something you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I try to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a practice where in fact, I want to intensify the practice because I have an opportunity to. Because at some point you realize that's the only reason we're here. We're here to send this energy out. You realize that there's only one crisis, that all of this fake pandemic or wars, they come down to one problem. And that's a spiritual energy crisis, not because there's a shortage of spiritual energy, but because we don't use it. And that's the whole crux of it. If we get this energy and we send it out through us, and we can do this, we're set up, we have the chakras, and the spine is our antenna, and we can contact this energy and we could send it out. And you could train yourself to do this, because that's why you do the pranayama. That's why you do the mantra and you do the prayer and you do all these things. That you get better at it, and you feel more of the energy flowing through you. Then you start having psychic experiences. Of course, you're going to have psychic experiences because you're opening up these higher chakras through which these higher energies flow. The higher energies don't flow through the lower chakras. They can't. They're of a higher frequency. They flow through the higher chakras. So when you start opening those up, it's a two-way, it's a two-way mechanism. The energy flows out. Also, the energy flows in, and the energy flows in is of a higher frequency, which is of a higher mind. So you start to have a deeper understanding of these things.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me about the pranayama thing, because I've been meaning to learn more about it and choose some breathing exercises and do them consistently, because I am a big believer in how breath can cleanse your body and do other things, of course, of a higher nature.
Yeah, well, a breath is it's the most important thing. I mean, you can only live for a few minutes without breathing. You can live longer without drinking, and you can live the longest without eating. But breathing, only a few minutes. So breath is of all the things that basically we're taking in prana. We're taking in prana through breathing, through drinking, and through eating. And it's just the taking in of prana. And but breath is the most important. So yeah, if you control the breath, you eventually control everything else. The breath,
yeah. We've seen examples of what the power of breathing can do, like with Wim Hof and Tibetan yogis and all sorts of people.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, in regards to Kundalini rising or enlightenment, things of that nature, do you think that ties in with like the light body? There's the idea of the rainbow body out of Tibet, I believe. Do you think, like, did Jesus achieve a light body, or did Sri Yukteswar achieve some sort of light body or something like that, where they can go back and forth manifesting a physical body whenever they want, things of that nature? And is that related to raising, like, you hear about the practice of Kundalini yoga and stuff. When somebody raises their Kundalini, does that automatically mean they're gonna develop a light body, or is there it's much more complicated than that, and there's different types of Kundalini techniques and stuff.
Well, I mean, if you raise Kundalini, it depends on how high you raise it, but the higher you raise it, you can do these things at will. Like, for instance, Madame Blavatsky demonstrated walking through brick walls. You know, she could walk through brick walls, and she had a picked audience in one room and a picked audience in another room separated by a brick wall, and she would pass right through the brick wall. So how did she do that? How did she walk through a brick wall? She didn't actually walk through a brick wall. She raised her body frequency up above this physical plane to where she was still physical, but she was above this, the frequency of this plane, so she could easily pass through. It's just like a ghost, right? A ghost can pass through walls, and it's like the other realms, they're not like over there, up there somewhere, or down there in the ground. They're right here. I mean, the realms are right here. And when you project from the body, you don't really go a great distance. You might only go for a few feet, yet the whole environment changes.
I wish we had her on video doing that.
Well, we don't have the cameras to measure it. But apparently on the higher realms, they do. They can record the different frequencies on the higher realms. But yeah, I mean, you can go a matter of a few feet and the whole environment changes, because the other realms are here. They're all dovetailed. The other 10 realms, you know, the 4 lower and the 6 higher, they're right here. We're right in it. Like, we could be in the middle of a temple on the higher realm. We could be in the middle of an ocean on another realm. They're just right here. They just of a different frequency. But when you go out onto those realms, like when you come out of the body, your whatever frequency you are vibrating at, you will go to that like realm, and then it's all completely physical. I mean, just as physical, except it's more mental in nature. In other words, you can direct things more through thought than you can here. Here, you kind of have to work everything out physically. If you want to go mail a letter, you got to kind of walk there. But on the other realms, you could kind of just if you got to go down to the end of the block, you can get there pretty quickly through thought, because the realms, while they're physical, they're more mental in nature, the other realms.
Yeah.
And when you get out, you experience that. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to be more consistent with the meditation, pranayama. I need to choose.
If you practice, you start to awaken these abilities. And I mean, I've been out on the other realms, you know. I've had a lot of interesting experiences. If you practice, it happens. It has to happen, because you're controlling the breath, right? Which is, it balances the chakras. You balance the chakras from the inside and the out, and then you do certain breathing exercises which clear the channels, which clear the Ida and the Pingala, you know, the channels up and down the spine, and then the Sushumna in the center. So you're gradually breaking through and allowing more of that psychic energy to flow up through the spine, and then, you know, you're balancing the chakras so that energy can flow in and out of the higher chakras. So when these things start to happen, when you keep doing this, things are bound to happen. It's just like if you lift weights enough, you know, you start getting stronger. I mean, it's the same exact thing. If you practice golf enough, sooner or later, you're going to be able to put that ball in the hole quicker than you could in the beginning. It's just a matter of practice. It's exactly the same thing as learning how to play an instrument, or learning how to be better at basketball, or riding a bicycle faster. It's exactly the same. There's nothing that's strange at all about it.